So I got interested in the PACE trial. I had a friend who got sick about 25 years ago, and so I always was aware of the illness and that it was something real. And I didn't really have an opportunity much to write about it, but then when the XMRV retroviral theory was going on about 5 years ago, I was able to do a lot of stories about that for the New York Times, who I was doing some work for at the time. And the PACE trial came out during that, and I hadn't heard of it, so I wrote a short story which basically took it at face value and, said, well, these things seem to work in this trial. I mentioned the problem with the case definition, but I didn't really, mainly I took it at face value because I didn't know anything about it. And then I got a lot of pushback from patients about the study's really bad, so I looked at it more. And as I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, the patients are right. At first I didn't really believe them because the patients were writing about how you could be disabled and recovered at the same time, or you could be recovered at baseline, and I thought that's really crazy. No journal would ever publish a study with such a ridiculous analysis. But then I looked at the trial and I'm like, oh yeah, they're right, that's true. So the more I looked at it, the more I realized this is just craziness. It's just a complete piece of garbage. And I just realized, nobody was really writing that, and I just realized if nobody did it, I didn't do it, nobody was going to do it, it seemed. So I just thought, okay, I have to do this. So what needs to happen now is that the study needs to be retracted. It's never been published, it's a fraudulent study, it needs to be taken down. The Lancet's intransigent, the authors are intransigent, they refuse to acknowledge anything wrong with the study. The data now has been released after a long court, process of going for people asking for the data, the raw data. So now they analyzed some of the raw data, which showed that their improvement rates were much lower than they claimed, according to their original protocol. So a big problem with the study was that they changed all their outcome measures, or many of their outcome measures, their main outcome measures, and so that they presented results that were different than the results they promised to present in their protocol. And the results they presented specifically in the Lancet paper and in the psychological medicine paper, the recovery paper in 2013, were incredibly much better than what they would have gotten had they analyzed it according to their original proposal. So there's always been a struggle to get the actual data from what their original results would have shown. Now we know that those results are pretty bad, and that there's no effective recovery, and that there's very minimal improvement, and much less than they claimed. And the improvement that they had was really clinically insignificant. So it's clear that the study was massaged, and the data were manipulated so that they got better results. That's just unacceptable. Now, what has to happen is that, there's no mechanism to force a retraction. It's just up to the journal. So it really, at this point, now that it's all out there and the information is obvious that it's a fraudulent study, the Lancet still won't do anything unless it's totally embarrassed and unless there's enough attention to it that it can't do anything except retract it. So how that happens, I don't really know. I think I made the point yesterday here at the conference that it's really at this point up to the scientists, because the patients have done incredible analytic work. I've written a lot already about it, so it's very clear what's going on. And the scientists have to basically protest, because otherwise the Lancet won't do anything. So that's what I hope happens next. The American scientists, or the scientists, international scientists, and most of them in this organization who work on this issue are on the biomedical side. And they totally don't believe that people are making themselves sick, or that they're deluding themselves that they actually have a disease, or that exercise is going to make them better. So from here, I get a great response. From patients, I get a great response. From people in the PACE camp, I get no response, because they know I'm right, maybe, but they don't have any responses, because, they hate me. So, I don't expect a response from them. But from most normal people actually working on the illness, yeah, they see that the problems are really bad. The problem is, most of them aren't actually like, yeah, they agree, but, they have careers, or, scientists don't want to get political, they don't want to cause protests, they don't want to be making noise. But if they want to help their patients, if they want their research to get traction, they're going to have to deal with PACE, because until PACE is retracted, I think gradually the biomedical stuff will come out, and then PACE will fade away. But it will really help a lot if PACE is actually retracted, and so it's sort of off the table as an element in this debate. Because why would anybody want to go for cognitive behavior therapy? Because in this field, it's associated with PACE. So the CDC recommends cognitive behavior therapy, but in this field, you can't recommend cognitive behavior therapy unless you specifically say, we don't mean it like PACE means it. We're not doing it so that to make you recover. We're not going to help you recover. This isn't a recovery tool. And this isn't a tool for getting you to change your beliefs about your illness. CBT is a tool to help you adapt to your circumstances, figure out what are the things that are, preventing you from adapting to your circumstances. So in that sense, it's used in many illnesses, not as a recovery or, as a cure kind of thing, but just as something to help people adapt. That's perfectly fine. And of course, if you have a terrible illness, you might benefit from psychological counseling to help you come to terms with it. What I worry about is that a lot of people will refuse to go for psychological counseling because it's associated at this point with the PACE trial and with their form of CBT. One of the things that they've done that's terrible is that they've put a bad name to exercise and to psychological counseling. So exercise is great. Even people with ME should exercise and maybe if they're bedbound, exercise is raising their hand like this as much as they, 5 times.
As long as they don't get worse.
Everybody, as long as they don't get worse. Everybody, whatever condition they're in, is at risk for deconditioning. Deconditioning isn't making them sick, but deconditioning happens when you're sedentary. And so it is important for people who have a chronic illness to move as much as they can, as long as it doesn't make them worse, right? So exercise in and of itself is obviously good for people in general. The graded part is what's the problem. The idea that you increase your exercise no matter what your symptoms are telling you, that's the problem. It's not, the alternative to PACE should not be don't get any psychological counseling and don't move your body at all. No, the alternative should be move your body as much as is safe with your condition and get counseling if you need help coming to terms with what's going on with you. Those are things people should do. One of the problems with PACE is that it's made those things unacceptable in the community, even though, as normally applied, they're really acceptable and useful.